Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Elliot Brown here, Essex at Business Radio. This is the very special show, C-19, How We Deal With It, where I'm talking to many people, not just here in Essex and the UK, but globally, worldwide, same word, but whatever. When I'm talking to people of all sorts of different, backgrounds, roles, businesses, and finding out about how COVID-19 has affected them personally, how they've had to adapt to maybe their business and change things that they're doing, which, we're all having to do right now, and advice and sort of ideas that they've got that can help you as a business owner or just everybody that's out there in the same boat. And today I've got Brian Waters in Indiana,
Yep.
in the USA. Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on the show, Elliot.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on. You've got your own podcast too, haven't you? I mean, you are an undertaker. Is that what do you call them, undertakers in the States?
Generally funeral directors.
Okay.
But essentially we are undertakers, morticians.
Okay. Yeah. So and you have a podcast as well, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. We have a podcast called Undertaking the Podcast, where we're two funeral directors, undertakers, and we just talk about what we do, have interviews, and just talk about life, death, loss, and what we all do about it.
Yeah. Okay. And we've had a little bit of a chat before we started recording, which I like to do with everybody. It's an interesting subject. I mean, did I expect a funeral director to maybe answer when I put the post out on social media? I absolutely not. But it's a topical subject. I mean, we're not going to be going into there's too much of the morbid detail. But something you said that was very, very interesting, of course, is that you're obviously working as hard as you can for people not to be passing away. So tell me about what you do in your podcast, and tell me how your view is of all of this at the moment, Brian.
Well, it's really scary, and in America, we've had from the get-go kind of two sets. We've got the folks who take it very seriously, and then we've got the fake news folks.
Yeah.
And they're starting to blend now into, hey, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
We're now into the week where it probably could be the start of the worst week for us. And with our podcast, Undertaking the Podcast, we've been documenting how we feel as time goes on and what we're dealing with in our daily lives as funeral directors.
Interesting.
From folks outside looking in, they're looking at funeral directors going, oh boy, they're lined up to make a pretty penny. Well,
I'm not being funny. It was a subject that when I knew you were coming on, that's exactly what I sort of said, actually, to be funny.
Yeah. And that's what folks think. Yeah. And I mean, really our business is twofold, helping folks with the dead, getting the dead to where they need to go, whether that's the grave or the fire.
Yeah.
And the second part, which is probably most of our time, is spent with gatherings. And right now gatherings are cut out. That's not what we're doing.
Weird.
So our business model is completely turned on its head.
Yes.
And it's just something that we're struggling to find the best answer for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I hadn't thought about it like that. Of course, we all know that those gatherings have changed, and and I'm not being funny. I did sort of dark humorly joke about the fact that obviously your business must be pretty good,
right?
And I'd mean that in humor, dark as it may well be. But I think we can talk on a level like that. It is an interesting way to look at it. Of course, I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you deal with the fact that you can't have those gatherings? I mean, are you restricting it? I mean, what are you guys doing right now?
Yeah, in our area of the world, in Indiana, and that's the thing with the United States, one would think we would have a universal protocol, but no, with 50 different states and territories, we've got a hodgepodge of completely different sets of rules.
Yeah.
Now we've got a standard set of guidelines from our Centers for Disease the CDC. There, I got it out. But we've been struggling with guidelines versus strict orders and rules, because rules and orders we can follow. Guidelines, we've got people doing all kind of different things.
Right.
So we all haven't got a blanket set of rules. So we're still trying to figure out the best possible way to do things. And it started out with cutting our gatherings. We went from 250 people to 50 people, very quickly to 10 people. And now it's pretty much 10 across the country. We're not going to have any more than 10 people, including staff at our services.
Wow. There must be some pretty upset family members out there where you've, wow. I mean, what is that? How does that work? I mean, level of hierarchy in a family. I mean, whoa, that's a strange subject matter. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's hard news to to deliver. But I think now folks have caught on that, this includes funerals too.
It is what it is.
Right. At the very beginning, when we say, sorry, we're going to have 10, families go, well, we know everybody and everybody's going to come,
Yeah.
even though, and I say everybody's been told to stay home, so
Yeah.
everybody shouldn't be coming.
Of course.
Families will go to different funeral homes trying to find someone who will break the rules.
Right.
And that happened for a long time now. Some funeral homes have been threatened with losing their licensure, being shut down. We see that on the horizon, but I think folks are really toeing the line now and following the rules. And it's out of a respect to keep people alive. Funeral directors are going out on social media and spreading the word that we want you alive. I mean, as much as we love to serve families in their time of loss, it's a hard thing to do in normal day situation. Now we're in a pandemic situation where we could have excess dead. It's just, I mean, we don't want our system to break either.
No. And systems are falling down all over the place, aren't they? And I mean, and you know, well, quite rightly so. What you said is where were those guidelines for a while? I mean, now it's clear. It's pretty clear everywhere, and people are sort of towing the line. But yeah, an interesting one. So I mean, that's on a business side, and I have to be honest with you, really interesting. It's made me think a little bit about the ramifications of how that works and how long that's going to go on as well. But I mean, how has this impacted you on a personal level? I mean, I suppose you, in the business that you're in, it is quite a personal thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, being from a very small rural community, we generally bury our friends.
Yeah.
Everyone else goes someplace else,
right,
for the most part. So we have a deep personal connection to our families, and it's been a lot of anxiety on our part, especially with the restrictions, and then especially with not having firm hard facts. So, right now our risk area is the living.
Yeah.
That is where transmission is going to happen.
Yes.
Where most folks really focus on that dead body as that vector of transmission, when that's really not the case. That's something as funeral directors we can control. We can control that situation and be safe.
Yeah, interesting. That is, it's an interesting thing. It's definitely making me think about the just the fallout of what is happening right now. So you've had to obviously change how you deal with that, and people tone the line. But I mean, usually I suppose people come to you, and I haven't dealt with that many deaths in my family, so it's an interesting thing to think about. I haven't had that many people die around me, luckily. Where you do have like larger gatherings, and now that they are smaller, do you do something else so you can bring those people in? I mean, what do you do for the rest of the family members?
We're seeing funeral homes get very creative. We're seeing a lot of live streaming where that wasn't.
That's what I'm sort of getting at. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll have a live streaming of maybe the officiant, the minister, the family member who will speak at a very small gathering.
Yeah.
One thing I've seen recently is funeral homes are setting up the deceased in a position to where the family can remain outside the building in, again, a very small gathering, less than 10, and mourners can drive by and they can pay their respects to the deceased, and also show that family that they're not alone and that they care.
Okay, come on. You've got to elaborate on this, because I've now got images in my head. And so come on, how do you do that? What? So are they virtually standing them up? I mean,
in
a position. I mean,
they're still in a casket.
This may sound like a really ridiculous question, but I'm curious.
No, not at all, not at all. So the deceased would still be in a casket, flowers around.
I didn't expect them to be standing up on a bloody pole, did I? I mean,
no.
I mean, I'm assuming they're in an angle, are they, or something like that?
No. Oh. It's traditional, laid down. They're not. The casket's not inverted or angled or stood up in a corner. So people are still restricted by the size of their vehicle, whether they can actually see or not.
Sure.
But they're driving by. This one funeral home I saw they had some double doors with an overhang that folks could drive on. Keep it safe from the weather, and folks could drive in, say hello to the family and drive on.
Right.
Quick story on this. There's a funeral home in Tennessee that, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago had a drive-through chapel, and the body would be placed right against the window, and folks could drive by after hours.
Yeah.
And frankly, everyone laughed at them. And probably right now they're laughing, going, you're all copying me.
Yeah.
And I thought of this 20 years ago. But We are seeing some people thinking, I hate to say this is going to sound so cliche, thinking outside of the box.
Outside the box. I knew you were going to say that then. I'm pleased you said it though, not me, to be fair.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
think, go on.
we are seeing some real big creativity within funeral service to keep families from knowing that they're not alone, and that is what's troubling here is the isolation. All the other things we do as funeral directors, we can control our environment, but the families that experience a death, them feeling isolated, that's the reason for a gathering, is
Yeah.
to get that community support, and now we're lacking that.
Of course, of course, and you've got, and as you said, you've you know, your second generation of your business, right? So, as I asked you before we started recording,
That's right.
and as you said, you know, it's a small community. How many people? How many people in Indiana?
There's about 7 million in Indiana, which is I suppose our entire market.
Okay,
But our closer niche market, we're probably at 100,000,
right.
and
Okay,
immediately in my small town, 1,800.
yeah. And you said that you've sort of started feeling it a little bit there, but not hugely, as in some other areas of the states, right?
Right, right. And recently we knew people were sick, but the testing has been slow.
Yeah,
So we've been social distancing for a while now, but the
yeah.
numbers are now just starting to catch up.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it is here, but it's not here in mass like it is in New York City or some of the big metropolitan areas like Indianapolis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and what advice are you sort of giving to people in these situations that you know that can't? I mean, I don't know what I have no idea what they're doing in the UK with in regards to, you know, what you guys do. I'm assuming they must be having to be creative as well. I mean, be interested to maybe have a chat with somebody in the UK and see what they are doing. But I mean, how are you advising families? How are you sort of delivering that thing? And what can you say to people that are out there that are potentially going to have to deal with, you know, the sort of, I don't know, it's a difficult one to ask, but yeah, how you get, how'd you deal with it? How'd you deal with it?
Yeah, it's tough. With our show, Undertaking the podcast, we're trying to get the word out to at least North American consumers that just because you hear one thing from a funeral director, if it doesn't sound right, you've got the ability and the freedom to stop and take your time and talk to another funeral director, or two or three or four. You can do that. It costs you absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
But we don't want families forced into a decision that they may not be comfortable with, like everyone has to be cremated. It's not the
yeah,
truth. Or you can't see your loved one. That's not the truth.
right,
In America, we haven't banned embalming. That is a situation that we can control and do it safely. Again,
okay.
our fear is the gatherings, the living. That's where transmission is occurring. But we do have funeral.
You've repeated that as well. So that I think is where people really need to understand that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the sort of thing I was trying to get at without, you know, so I was trying to think how I would ask you,
But
but yeah, go on.
Well, so what we're seeing from funeral homes, though, is not all funeral homes are not created equally here. There are funeral directors that are very fearful of this disease, and they will not allow your deceased loved one into their care. This
Right.
is by far not the majority, but there
Okay.
are some. And there
Okay.
are some funeral homes that will only allow you to select certain things. So
Right.
as a consumer, make sure you ask questions and know that you've got the power to ask questions and take your time on that.
Yeah. It's a very valid point. There's a lot of scaremongering going on all levels, I think, and a lot of fear. Listen, all you've got to do is watch the news and see some country that has just wheeled a body out where they've covered the inside of the coffin in zinc, for example, which was something I saw the other day. I'm not being funny, but things like that don't exactly help the cause, do they?
No, no. And I saw a picture going around the other day, and it said how many people does it take to transport a deceased person? And they've got a picture of medical staff, and there's like 10 people escorting this body.
Right.
And then all its funeral directors go, "Wait a second, it takes one of us.
Yes.
What's going on here, folks?"
Yeah.
But it's just observations, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. But all your family and close friends are all well and safe right now. Yeah.
Yeah, as of right now, I mean, we're really taking this distancing thing very. So we're close by, but we're not getting together. I do have some coworkers in Indiana that have gotten sick,
Okay.
and um, we can trace that back to interactions with the living. So
Okay.
that's the big focus from everybody is the focus on the body, but that's not, the deceased is not where we're getting infected from that we know of right now.
Yeah, yeah. Joe, what that, and I think that's a very strong message that's come across in this as well, and actually not what I thought we were going to talk about, which is great because that's what I love about these conversations is you don't really know where it's going to go, and we didn't know each other before, but I have a feeling we're going to be keeping in contact as everybody that has come back to me on this what is turning out to be quite an incredible series of podcasts that I'm doing and learning so much from everybody. I'm pleased we've had this conversation because it's an interesting message to get out there to people. I really, really do think there's a lot to be taken from this today.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And unfortunately, death is something that we all avoid, and it's so much in our face right now
Yeah,
that there's no better time to talk about your story and you know your story as a human being, and tell your friends and your family and your loved ones, interact with them, although we have to do it from a distance. The story of your life, it doesn't end at death. It continues on in all of us that know your story.
absolutely, absolutely. Honestly, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. It is a subject matter that could be dark. I think we've tried to keep it quite light, and I think it's been very informative. I think it's been really good. I mean, it's a pleasure getting to know you. Where can people find your podcast, Brian?
Yeah, you can check us out, Undertaking the Podcast. You can get it on all major podcasting platforms, and you can check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn, Undertaking the Podcast, or on Twitter at Undertaking PC, and on Instagram at Undertaking PC as well. Yep, check us out.
Perfect, perfect. Well, when we put this post out, there'll be those details around the post somewhere. Yeah, let's keep in contact. I'll be intrigued to see how things go over the next over the coming weeks or however long it is. And I wish you the best of luck with what you're doing. And I think you probably need it a little bit right now. It's not you're probably in one of the most difficult aside from all the health workers, and it's NHS here, but obviously the health workers things in the States. It falls to you guys as well. So thank you to you from everybody, for what you do and how you're dealing with it. Because by the sounds of it, you're keeping a very straight mind about it, and I think you're doing a great job.
Yep. Yeah, appreciate you having me on the show, Elliot. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much. So it's Brian Waters there, and it's Undertaking the Podcast in Indiana in the States. Thanks very much, Brian. I'm going to sign off for now. It's been a very, very interesting podcast. I've learned a lot from it, and I hope you have too. There will be some links around this so you can find Brian's podcast if you want to hear from him having a chat with people about what's going on and everything around his industry as well. And also, if you don't know already, go to www.essexbusinessradio.com where you can find all the links to our app and all of our socials as well. So thanks so much for joining us on C-19, how we deal with it. Thanks so much, Brian.
Hey, thank you.
Cheers. And I'm off for now. Ciao for now, Brown Cow.